And while people are trickling in, if you're not muted, go ahead and mute yourself. I can also do that for you if you're having any troubles. And you also can take your video off. You don't have to be on video. And just for those of you who are here, welcome. Thank you for coming. So just some quick housekeeping rules so that everybody knows. We're going to have our computers or devices muted. We're going to make sure that we have our video cameras off. If you guys have any questions throughout the two presentations tonight, if you look at your screen down at the bottom, there's going to be a little chat bubble that says chat underneath it. If you hit that, it's going to open up so that you can actually ask questions in real time. And we'll make sure that we monitor that so that way we can ask the questions on your behalf. And you can submit those questions there. It's also great too because other people can see your questions they may also have to know whether or not they should ask questions too. All right, so let's get started while people are still coming in. Awesome, so glad that all you guys are coming in to participate. So quick introduction. Thank you all for coming back to Woodland Wednesdays. We're so happy to have you guys. I'm Sean Nepper. I'm with Trumbull Soil and Water Conservation District. Whether you've been with us from the beginning or this is your first Woodland Wednesday, a part of our series that we have, we want to say welcome and thanks for being here and with us this evening. We're glad that you guys are taking time out to see these awesome new topic that we're going to be presenting on. It's very informative and we're grateful for our partners and presenters who make this program possible. So joining us tonight, we got Natalie from Lake Soil and Water Conservation District. She'll be monitoring the chat, as will I, throughout the program. And so right now, we have a special opportunity to have Jordan Hoewischer from the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation and Anthony Pappas from Habitat Heritage and Forestry LLC, and they're going to be presenting on the carbon market. It's new and upcoming for a lot of private landowners, so we felt like it was a great opportunity to have a program for our Woodland Wednesdays. Like I said, for those of you who are just coming in, we're going to make sure that we're muted. We're going to make sure that our video is off, except for our hosts and our presenters. If you have a question, go ahead and put it in that chat bubble or chat box. I'm sorry, it's a little chat bubble down at the bottom of your screen. You can go ahead and hit that and you can ask your questions there. So just real quick to introduce our two presenters. We have Jordan Hoewischer. He's the Director of Water Quality and Research with the Ohio Farm Bureau Federation. He received a BS in turfgrass science with a minor in animal science from the Ohio State University and Natural Resources and Environmental Sciences, master's and in grain from the University of Illinois. Jordan grew up as part of the 5th generation on his family's hog and grain farm in Sydney, Ohio, and currently lives in Columbus. So thank you, Jordan, for participating with us. And then we have Anthony Pappas. He is the owner and lead consultant with Heritage Habitat and Forestry LLC. Anthony has a BS in Forestry Resource Management from the West Virginia University and is a certified forester with the Society of American Foresters. He is an Arkansas registered professional forester and West Virginia registered professional forester. He is also a technical service provider with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, or NRCS. As a West Virginia University alum, Anthony has years of experience managing public lands for the benefit of both wildlife and the eventual realization of economic returns on timber, as well as working for a timber consulting company focused on ecologically sound timber production. So from the prairies of North Dakota, down the hills of northern Alabama and out to the Ozarks of Arkansas. Anthony has experience in a multitude of forest types and habitat diversities. So taking firsthand knowledge of wildlife forestry, Anthony has built an Ohio-based company around managing forests for multiple uses. So welcome, you two. I appreciate it. And I'm going to pass it on to Jordan Hoewischer, who's going to start us off on our presentation. Go ahead, Jordan.
All right. Well, I appreciate everyone that is joining us today. Let's see if I can get this thing on full screen. Can you see the full screen?
Yep, looks like you're good. Thanks,
All
Jordan.
right. Well, I appreciate you guys having me today. I will be the first one to admit that I am a flatlander from Western Ohio with a turf science degree. So I do not relate to Northeast Ohio too much, but I do own a farmhouse in Hocking Hills, so I'm somewhat of a carpetbagger. I do own some land that has some sort of topography and some trees, but I'm here to kind of give you a setup for Anthony's presentation to kind of show you a little bit of the why that we're talking about this. Why is carbon such a big deal, and why it's always kind of prevalent in terms of environmental news and land management news and things like that. I will kind of shift back just to, the biography did a great job. If you guys don't know anything about Farm Bureau, we're a county led organization, a grassroots organization. We have representation in every county where they determine what someone like me advocates for. So if you don't know Farm Bureau, please be familiar, because we do hold a lot of experts in a lot of different areas. I deal with a lot of grain farmers, obviously, in Northwest Ohio on water quality issues, but we have a lot of expertise and energy and land management and water quality, and we kind of reach all over the place. So that's my little pitch for Farm Bureau. But it's not just for we get a little bit of a misnomer that we're for the big farmers, but our members are the smaller farmers who need help getting pointed in the right direction a lot of times with a lot of different issues. So I'll start with kind of the climate ramifications that we've seen, locally and statewide. I think the stat that I will kind of, punch you in the face with a little bit is, if you were born after February of '85, you've never seen, you've never experienced a cooler than average month on the planet. So that's not saying, oh, sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's not. Every month has beat the monthly average temperature since February of 1985. So a lot of things I'll throw out there are maybe kind of dispelling maybe any doubt that the climate has changed and our weather has changed. But that's one of them that really sticks out. And then summer of 2022, we saw 4 separate 1,000-year flood events across the country in a 5-week stretch, including flooding in Kentucky that unfortunately 40 people passed away. And that one really kind of gets to me a little bit, right? We hear about, okay, someone's beach house, falls into the ocean, or there's some flooding here and there, or unfortunately wildfires in some areas. But 40 people dying in a flood in 2022 sounds like it should be 1922 or 1822, or maybe in the Philippines or somewhere not in our Midwestern states. So it shows you the danger that we kind of have in front of us when it comes to some of these things. And so just kind of level setting a little bit on, this is a kind of an emotional topic for some. We are fortunate in Ohio that we have a pretty good stable environment, but we are still being affected in a few different ways. If we're talking about carbon today. The reason why carbon is so dangerous in this instance is that it can really increase the amount of water vapor in our atmosphere, and so more water vapor, more temperature, more variability in our rain and water cycle. So we talk a lot about temperature, global warming, average temperatures. But really, it's the rainfall that's the danger, and the thing that's going to get us the most is that long periods of wet followed by long periods of dry, and really seeing some things that we've never seen before in terms of our weather. These are some charts that I pulled from weather stations across the Northwest Ohio, where I predominantly do a lot of my work because of algal blooms in Lake Erie. But this goes to show you the 1 inch plus rainfall events by decade. And so you can see 1960 from the left all the way to 2000 into the 2010s on the right. And we're seeing a 50% increase in 1 inch or more rains from 1990 to 2020. We saw a 50% increase in those 1 inch or more rains. And that's across the board. And this is me going through weather station data. This isn't picked apart by, this isn't cherry picked. This isn't whatever. This is, Bowling Green, Salina, Findlay, Defiance, kind of throwing a ring on the map there and pulling the data. And you can see that we're heavily challenged by heavier rains, and it can be quite the issue. This is something that is also monitored. This is suitable field days for working on farms. I know obviously we're here for Woodlands, but this goes for everybody who's working outside. Farmers are losing 5 suitable field days in the spring and then 5 in the fall on average. And so you can see that the number of times that we're not mucking it up outside, is decreasing, and that has some ramifications. It may push smaller farmers to not be around. It pushes bigger farmers to get bigger. And I think that could be an issue, but a lot of this is driven obviously by increase in temperature, increase in water vapor, increases in heavier rains that can put people out of the field. One of the biggest misnomers, you'll see, people will say, CO2, carbon, it's cyclical, we're just in the different cycle. But I know this chart's a little bit weird to see, but this is a chart that represents CO2 levels represented in ice cores from up until 800,000 years ago. So that top blue line, the navy blue line, you see this like kind of a nice cycle. It cycles between 275 all the way down to 175, and kind of falls within that. Well, now our cycle has broken through the top of that, and we're up to 400, and we barely get down to that 275 that used to be the top of the cycle. And so that's why you hear scientists be concerned about CO2 levels in our atmosphere, is because they have this historic data. We're not just going back 100 years. We're not in a 250-year cycle. We're talking about 800,000 years of ice core data that shows that, hey, we've broken out of this cycle we've been in. And it's alarming. If you go back, what I say, for every 1 degree Celsius, 6 to 7.5% increase in water vapor. So when we have the carbon rising and the temperature rising, those are combinations that can obviously be alarming globally, not just locally. And I'll say too, I give this presentation a lot to farmers, right? Some of you probably are farmers. There's some skepticism about climate change. I probably should have started with that. I'm not here to talk about the politics of it. I'm here to talk about the science and the data. Something that makes it a lot easier to say, okay, let's just put a pin on this and say, okay, rainfall is increasing. We're not in a carbon cycle. We've busted through the top of that, and now we're talking about how to maybe bring that down if we can. I would say that even though I trust the science and the data, still a little skeptical of how much we can pull back into the atmosphere, but certainly there's a lot for us to do. There's a lot of acres, a lot of trees, a lot of projects for us to reduce, and we have had a pretty good reduction in the United States over the last 20 or 30 years, bringing our CO2 levels down. Obviously, there's a lot of talk globally about what is going on in China and other countries. The United States is still the leader in greenhouse gas production since the industrial age. Those other countries are closing in on us fast. We've actually, righted the ship, so to speak. And so there's obviously a lot of ramifications around, okay, well, are we responsible still, or whatever those arguments are? But we are still the cumulative leader in greenhouse gas production since the industrial age has started. So we can definitely point the finger at other countries now, but we are a culprit long before in history to putting CO2 in the atmosphere. What's the long-term ramifications? We talk about these different patterns, different weather patterns, different climate patterns. We are trending towards a North Carolina winter and a Arkansas summer. So maybe I will admit that the audience that I'm talking to in Northeast Ohio, you guys have a way different climate, obviously, when it comes to what winter means to you. You guys will have a casual, half to full foot of snow, on a Tuesday, and it won't blink. And in Columbus, where I live, if we had a foot of snow, obviously we would shut down for a long time. So I don't know if this is applicable to your specific environment, but this is kind of the general trend for Ohio. But yeah, admittedly that the lake effect and what you guys experience up in your corner of the state could probably vary a little bit more. But this is what those trends are saying. The summertime, having those wide ranges in moisture, longer growing seasons, which can be a positive, right? If you're a gardener, if you're a fruit production, vegetable production, it could maybe be a different scenario for you. Obviously warmer temperatures in the winter and at night. And so, when we talk about global warming, it's most likely not talking about the high temperature. That's always kind of the joke, that people will talk about if they're kind of critics of global warming. It's 65 in July. That's global warming. Well, that's just one weather data point. We're talking about average temperature, and it's the overnight temperatures that have increased that average. You guys feel it, right? At least I feel it in Columbus, where I guess for me, I'll be the old man and say, well, back when I was a kid, 30 some years ago, it was hooded sweatshirts in the morning, working on the farm, because it was probably high 50s, low 60s. Even though it was 90 degrees during the day. And I think those are fewer and far between now, if we're going anecdotally, and the data will support that we have overnight temperatures that sometimes will be close to 80, at midnight. And that has, ramifications, right? If you have animals, maybe not as much of a reprieve from the heat, if you got pasture animals, or ones that rely on certain times of the year to do birthing or calving or what have you, or if it's just disease, right? You need, at least from my experiences, you need those overnight high temperatures with humidity are ripe for fungus and different things to pop up on your plants. And so does that do diseases that we normally wouldn't see, or maybe pests that we normally wouldn't see on our trees or crops, do they start to creep north? We saw, at least in the southern part of Ohio, last year we only had a few days or a couple days around Christmas where it got to be really cold. But other than that, we really didn't see the ground freeze too much. We didn't really see those overnight temperatures go really low. So what does that mean to overwintering pests and things like that? So just something to watch out for. when it comes to ramifications of climate change and increasing temperature for those of you in production. So I will turn it a little bit more towards what we're here to talk about, but I just wanted to give you a setup of kind of why people are making this a big deal. It's not, minus the political or who's to gain from it or whatever. We don't really care about that for this instance. We're talking about science and the data and why we're here. Carbon is the most abundant element that we have on Earth, and it serves as the building block for all the growth that you see. It's commonly found in living and dead organisms as carbon dioxide gas in the atmosphere, organic matter in the soil, fossil fuels, obviously, and then sedimentary rock deposits, and then in multiple forms in the ocean. It's a huge, huge, complex and variable system that fluctuates constantly. There's a lot of moving parts to this, and so it is a trickier greenhouse gas than most. It sticks around for a while. Unlike methane and some of the other ones that have a shorter half-life, carbon is pretty long. And that's why instead of reduction, not only reduction, we're trying to do capture as well to make sure that we can try to capture some of the unforeseen sins of our ancestors. I'm gonna throw some charts at you. I know Anthony's got some charts. This shows you if you're more of a visual learner. Obviously, listening to me read bullet points off of a PowerPoint can be pretty boring at 6:30 at night. So it just kind of gives you an idea of where carbon comes in and out. Some of it's pretty obvious, right? If something decomposes, that's the respiration of microbes when they're breaking something down. It's storing some carbon, some of it's kind of releasing if there's a fire, or if you're bulldozing land for production, it's getting released to the atmosphere. Some of it's getting made into fossil fuels from long ago, but when you release those, obviously carbon goes into the atmosphere. And then the thing we talked about before, the ocean has a lot of different things going on in terms of how it cycles through its carbon. So just trying to bounce between PowerPoint sentences and charts, just in case we got people with different ways. I'm more of a visual learner myself. So in terms of forests in the global carbon cycle, it's a super critical component. They're constantly absorbing and releasing carbon dioxide. Obviously, the trees are constantly putting on growth. They're dropping sticks, they're dropping leaves, they're being used in different things. They sequester that carbon through photosynthesis, and then those sequestration rates are greater in the younger growth, 20 to 7-year-old forests. When those growth rates are really high and they're rapid and they're really putting on mass. I think it's like 50% of tree mass by dry weight is carbon. And then the carbon resides in forests in different places in different amounts at different times. So it's a big, huge cycle. And again, another visual. Some people will say that there's a closed loop in the forest carbon in the atmosphere. It's got an ability to give it up and then take it back and then store parts of it, and then give it up and take it back and store parts of it. Obviously there's people that do a lot of wood burning, a lot of wood products, a lot of fire, and then just general decomposition from our organisms that release a lot of that CO2 in the atmosphere. But again, the trees get a chance to capture it and keep it, as opposed to like a fossil fuel system who releases it, and there's really not a recapture system within that realm. Something called the forest carbon pool. So just how carbon is stored by forests. It can be influenced. There's different factors that can influence the amount and proportion of carbon in the pool. It's the forest age, like we talked about. The younger, more rapid growth is going to store things more rapidly. Species composition. Some species are better than others. That's probably more of an Anthony question and not me, in terms of which ones do the best. There's obviously natural and human disturbances, like we talked about. soil characteristics, their ability to store that carbon, and then just the land use history. Is there an ability to store that carbon? I would say also the most important, this is probably the thing I will step back and say I'm pretty novice in this area compared to Anthony and some other folks, probably maybe even people in the audience that have a lot more information than I do. But the thing I overlooked when I was kind of coming up to speed with this presentation is how much we do not talk about wood products being a good source of storing carbon. So, we talk a lot about, oh, we're cutting down trees for this or that. Well, if they're being made into wood products, that can be stored for a long, long time. And that's carbon that's not being released in the atmosphere. So this gives you another visual of just kind of, the percentages of where the carbon it is in the forest pool. So 5% are in harvested wood products, 5% in dead wood, 6% in the litter, 5% in the biomass, 26% in leaves, branches, trunks, and understory, and then 54% in the soil. So that gives you a little visual of kind of where that carbon is stored. So if you, have a good working management plan, and you're managing these trees and putting on rapid growth, we can get some good storage throughout the carbon pool there for forests. I'm going to kick it into a little bit different category here, just to talk, kind of lead up to, I'm going to talk about one of the programs that are available in Ohio, but I'm trying not to step on Anthony's presentation too much because he has more of the programming to talk about than I do. Forest for carbon sequestration is kind of a natural climate solution. That's kind of what we're here to talk about, right? There's a lot of different ways that companies have tried to figure out how to reduce carbon, but this is obviously a natural one that we can manage. These forest carbon projects are designed to increase carbon storage in nature and natural products. So these programs are built to use these natural systems and manage them in a way that can kind of kick their carbon sequestration into gear. Carbon benefits are calculated by comparing enrolled properties that are employing improved forest management to like a baseline. So there's a baseline of, okay, here's what we're going to compare you to when you're improving, as you're adding more years, you're adding more mass to the, circumference of your trees, or your average circumference, or however it's measured. It's something that will increase over time as you get older and older in that forestry. And Anthony will talk about some of the length of programs, and that's a reason why the programs are built for the time that they are. The carbon benefits through time, you'll see that pretty slim at the start, but as you manage and get the growth going pretty rapidly, that carbon benefit starts to increase quite a bit up into that 40 to 70 year range. Carbon benefits used to create carbon credits. So I'm sure some of you may know how this works, but there's carbon offset credits that are being used to fund projects to get that CO2 sequestered. So typically it's a traditional big bad company, that's trying to offset their carbon uses. I talked to a lot of farmers, like I said, where I like to joke about stuff, and I throw these jokes out, and if I get half a smirk, I consider that a win. But I tell them when they're skeptical about these carbon programs, which I'm skeptical of some of them as well, especially the row crop ones, that this is your chance this is maybe your only chance to get money back from Apple or Amazon or Google or whoever. It's the only time you can get money back from these big guys is to do some of these projects. And so maybe that will make you feel a little bit better when you have to throw up $1,000 for an iPhone. This is just a brief overview, just a brief little chart of kind of some of the developers in Ohio. Like I said, Anthony's gonna have a little bit more information, but we're talking about 20 to 40 year contracts. There's some acreage minimums. There's some different hoops to jump through, but those will be explained in more detail. But just to kind of give you an idea, that, there's some harvest limits, there's some management that needs to be done. And then there's payments that are done. To give you an idea of just kind of some comparisons of how you maybe are normally doing this, if you're in a typical timber situation, the landowner gets paid by the logger for their trees, and then that product goes to the mill. But for carbon, the landowner gets paid by whatever project developer. If it's TNC, if it's whoever that's doing the project, you'll get paid by that person or that group. For limiting or deferring the timber harvest on that land, and then the product is more carbon storage. Or another analogy would be, if you have some sort of equip payment through NRCS, that it's for a wildlife habitat or water quality, you would be using this carbon offset buyer to increase that carbon sequestration. I'm going to briefly go through one of the programs that should be opening up in February in Ohio. It's the Family Forest Carbon Program through American Forest Foundation and the Nature Conservancy, and you'll hear me refer to them as TNC. It's a new carbon program that really is focusing on supporting family forest owners to improve soil health and addressing climate change. So not for industrial areas, not for areas that are plantation type growth, but for those 30 acre to 5,000 acre family forests, if you guys have them that big, to manage them in a way to address more carbon sequestration. 20-year contracts that receives roughly $200 an acre one-time payment in exchange for kind of the carbon rights of that area, and then they have to engage with some sort of forest management strategy to make sure that you guys are doing the right thing to have the right things growing there for that contract. So again, I'm glossing over some of this so Anthony can give a little bit more detail. But this is just to kind of give you an idea of what's available. A lot of these programs, at least on the crop side, are kind of fly by night. So it's nice to see some of these look pretty substantial and are here to stay. I will keep going here. They really want, to allow forest stands to mature and retain, the highest quality trees. They're going to limit harvest or thinning, but within a sustainable guideline. They're going to produce more timber, store more carbon and improve the habitat over those 20 years. There'll be no more than 25% of the property's aerial basal area per acre being removed. So there'll be some measurements taken to determine that. No more than 10% reduction in the average stand diameter, and then there's some buffer zones around water bodies that are needed. But again, those will be laid out in some sort of plan. You'll work with a TSP, some sort of forest professional to help with a management plan to get through, the hoops that you need to jump through for this program. But again, somebody who can help with that right growth rates and the right management systems that you need. One of the biggest worries about these programs is the credibility and accountability. They want to make sure that the landowners who are involved care about this program. They're not just trying to cash a check. They want to make sure it's being measured correctly by the forest professionals, and they really want to make sure that you're not just throwing money at something haphazardly. That all parties are serious and have high integrity, and they want to make sure that things are done the right way so that they're truly increasing the amount of carbon storage, and not just passing the money into a program. Eligibility, again, I think I heard February of next year for this specific program. It's in the Appalachian Plateau region, so I believe at least I don't know if it's just Ashtabula, but I don't know which counties are typically up in that, or technically in that area, but you guys are right on the doorstep. Again, natural areas, no plantations, and then no existing restrictions. And then no, you can't double dip. So if you already have a program involved with reducing harvest from this area or some other program, typically you're not eligible for these programs. These programs are not very fond at landowners potentially double dipping from on the same acre for the same type of practices. Again, enrollment, you'll be able to go to the website, enter your property on a map tool, and then you can find a representative and they'll kind of connect you from there. I think things that you can do now, explore what options are out there, and what maybe what you need to get in order before you do this. I always suggest for our farmers for row crop carbon programs is just kind of ask questions, see what information you need, and then have it ready if you so choose, instead of maybe doing it all at the last minute. But yeah, familyforestcarbon.org would be a good start for this specific program. And then this is the contact through the Nature Conservancy that I work with. So if you have any specific answers or questions, Tom is really good at giving some insight on what's what. So tom.rooney@tnc.org, and he's a good resource for any questions about eligibility, and just there's obviously a lot of questions that get thrown around with this type of stuff, and so hopefully Farm Bureau, Anthony, TNC, whoever can be a good resource to kind of point you in the right direction if you have some questions. And then my information, here's my email if you have some questions specifically for me. And then since I am a millennial, I have a podcast. We have a radio studio in our office, so it was just calling my name. But I do it kind of a water quality environmental podcast, and so I did a series on carbon programs for row crops last year. And then Tom will be on the next episode to talk about forest programming, and so look out for that. But you can download that, on iTunes or anywhere you can get podcasts, you can find it. So that is all I have. Do you want to take specific questions for me, or how do you want to do that?
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Jordan. That was awesome. Appreciate it. I got to say real quick, though, one of the things that come out to me when we're talking about climate, back when I was in university, we focused on, the temperature variation, which is what I gathered a lot from you in this, right? Is like, trees, plants, they can withstand a lot, right? But with these temperatures varying from very low to very high very quickly, that can disrupt a lot of their functions. So, thinking about it like that, it's important. And then tying that into carbon sequestering, right? Trees grow, they take carbon out of the atmosphere, they hold it, they store the carbon. Even after you make a chair, right, it still stores that carbon. So that cycle, it's important for us to all recognize and know, right? So if there's let's see, well, a lot of people are asking about that program. So those of you who don't have access to the chat, that family forest carbon program that actually is available in Ashtabula, Trumbull, Lake, Geauga. So if you guys are in those counties, please reach out. I think that's a great program to definitely get established.
I think Tom was actually in the chat, so
yes, Tom's been answering. So thank you, Tom.
I will say that I was a bad impersonation of Tom in this program, but hopefully we'll send people your way, Tom. So,
and it looks like Anthony added in the chat too. There are several different programs with the lowest minimum acreage requirement of 20. So for those of you who have pretty small acreages like that, there are programs that are available for you guys, because we want to encourage you to be stewards of the land and continue tree growth. And then if you have more than 5,000 wooded acres, there will be several additional programs that we might not touch base on here. But if that does relate to you guys, please feel free to reach out to our presenters or us here at Soil and Water Conservation Districts or Farm Bureau, and we'd be happy to get you those resources for those individuals. But other than that, if you guys have any other questions for Jordan, feel free to put those into the chat. Jordan will be on and he can jump in and answer those. So real quick, we will now pass it off to Anthony Pappas to do his presentation. So take it away, Anthony.
Thank you. Let me put this on full screen. All right, I'm assuming everyone can see my screen and that everything is hunky-dory.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. My name's Anthony Pappas. I'm the owner of Heritage Habitat and Forestry, and I'm going to talk about forest carbon credits, some of the programs that are available, and how this whole process works. I expect lots of questions, and we'll go over those at the end. Here's a brief outline. I'm going to barely touch on personal background. We're going to talk about the carbon cycle just for a couple seconds. Jordan did a good job kind of going through all of that. Why we have such a thing called forest carbon credits. So it's why industries mitigate CO2. And then there's different types of projects, different marketplaces, and how small landowners can get involved in the decision-making process. And then some critiques and kind of how we assist landowners through this process. So briefly, we're focused on sustainable and comprehensive forest management. We operate, I think now in over 20 states, but our main states for consulting with landowners are Ohio, PA, and West Virginia. Our most popular services are management plans, carbon consulting, which we're talking about here, as well as timber sales. Personal background, Sean already hit on these, so I'm not going to keep on talking about myself. Let's see, here's the carbon cycle. This is, the stuff you'll learn in elementary school. Today, we're here to talk about that forest there in the background and how CO2 goes down and oxygen goes up. That's just one part of this whole game that we're playing. So what's going on here? So you've got corporations, let's say it's Pappas Industries, and I manufacture baby dolls. Over my manufacturing processes, it's calculated that I emit 100 tons of carbon dioxide over the course of the year. Well, if I want to claim that our company is carbon neutral or a net zero emitter, or if we live in California, we're mandated as a company to offset your emissions. So we need to take the 100 tons that we emit and replace that through credits or other means, such as improving our technology on our smokestacks, or investing in solar or wind power, or engineering more efficient materials and processes. Or we can pay someone else to store all this carbon that we're emitting in the form of carbon credits. And if you're a company and you are capturing more carbon through these different processes than you're emitting, you could sell your leftover carbons to the companies that need to, balance themselves out. In California, this is regulated, mandated by the government. In the rest of the country, minus 2 or 3 other states, it's voluntary, and we'll talk about that. So that's sort of what's going on here with what a carbon credit is. A carbon credit is simply a term on the amount of carbon dioxide and other carbon forms of carbon that are stored in materials and then calculated and monetized for sale. Here's how it works. You've got your trees doing what trees do, carbon dioxide and oxygen. Some of that most of it goes in the soil. Others stay within the plant. We take that forest and we manage it for long-term health and sustainability. So then that landowner can then generate these carbon credits because this forest is storing X number of tons of carbon per year. So that gets calculated into a credit. And then those credits can then be purchased by corporations if they wish. There are several types of carbon programs. And when I say carbon offset projects, an offset, that's simply I emit 1 ton as a corporation. I need to buy 1 ton's worth of credits. So that's what that offset means. It's kind of like neutralizing your emissions with purchasing these credits. And a project is simply a landowner that has agreed to sell their carbon rights to certain carbon companies. That then becomes a project. So we have improved forest management. That's one type of project that generates carbon credits. So that's kind of what it says. It's improving the management of the forest, you know, albeit with some harvest restrictions or required management practices or so forth. There's another type of project called avoided conversion that can generate credits by paying landowners to keep their forest as forest and not being converted to urban development or other non-forest use. That's a pretty common project type near urban areas. And then you have afforestation, reforestation. So basically planting trees on something that was unforested. So think of old pasture land, old mine land, and so forth. You can generate credits as the landowner by planting trees on that acreage that is not forested. And there are companies out there that will pay you to plant these trees and then pay you for having those trees planted on your property over time. So those are the different types of projects that generate these credits that we're talking about. Now, there are a couple different marketplaces that these credits are sold to. So if you're a landowner and you've generated carbon credits, let's say it's through one of these programs, let's say it's IFM, the top one, improved forest management. You've, and I'll use a round number, you've signed up for program X that says that you'll allow your forest to grow to a more mature state for 50 years by limiting the amount of harvesting and only allowing certain types of harvest in certain areas. So you've got 50 years kind of a contract, 50 years worth of credits. Well, then those credits can be sold in 2 different places, either a compliance market or a voluntary market. And it's not necessarily the landowner that's selling the credits to these marketplaces. It's the landowner selling the credits to a company that creates the project that then sells the credits to companies like Google, Walmart, Southwest Airlines, and so forth. So the landowner is not directly exchanging their property's credits with corporations. There's that middleman. That's what's called a project developer, so the carbon company. As Jason said, the Family Forest Carbon Program would be an example of that middleman. So these programs, Family Forest Carbon Program, some of the other ones, Forest Carbon Works, Finite Carbon, A New Climate, all these different ones, they operate in 1 or 2 or both marketplaces. The compliance marketplace is government mandated cap and trade. There's an example of that is the California Air Resources Board. I won't go into too much detail on this because we're getting real nitty gritty, but just know that there's 2 different ways, 2 different places that these carbon credits can be sold as compliance credits or voluntary credits. The vast majority are voluntary credits. Most of these corporations that are purchasing these credits are doing it voluntarily, both for a lot of it's for marketing, so they can put that sticker on their product that says net zero emissions or other slogans, because the general public is willing to pay extra for that on a product. A lot of this carbon credit system that we're discussing today is driven by private industry. In the US, very little of it is driven by government mandates. It's been tried in the past, but California, and I believe there's some New England states, and I think Washington or Oregon might have passed something. And then there's, of course, an international footprint as well. But a lot of this is done in the voluntary marketplace that's not government mandated, that is companies doing this because they want to do it. So there's different registries. So you've got the landowner that's got the trees, you've got the project developer that pays the landowner for their credits that the project developer has calculated based on what their woods looks like. That project developer is then basically calculating those credits as either compliance credits or voluntary credits, depending upon how they do all their math and their equations on how they calculate all these things. And then once they've got their credits actually quantified, they'll be sold in these different registries. So think of it like as a store. The registry is the place where that project developer will take that credit and put it, and then a buyer, like a corporation, let's say Pappas Industries, will look at these different registries and purchase the credits through the registry. And the registries have their own rules on what makes a credit a credit. So those project developers follow the registry's rules on what makes a credit, which then is how the project developer pays the landowner for the landowner's forest. There are three main registries in the US, the American Carbon Registry, Climate Action Reserve, and Verra. So you have landowner Anthony Pappas sold my credits to Heritage Carbon Program. Heritage Carbon Program took a look at my woods and said, we're going to make this into a compliance project with compliance credits. And then we're going to take those credits and we're going to put them for sale on the California Air Resources Board. Or we're going to develop voluntary credits and we're going to put those for sale on the Climate Action Reserve. And then a buyer, let's say it's Pappas Industries, says, I want to buy credits only from the Climate Action Reserve or American Carbon Registry or Verra, whatever it may be. So then they look at that pool of landowners, of projects that are certified credits within that registry. And that's how that whole transaction process goes. The programs that we're discussing here briefly are for landowners with less than 5,000 acres. If you've got more than 5,000 wooded acres, which we do run into quite a bit, there are several additional programs that we're not discussing here, and we don't need to get in the weeds of those. But there used to be a program that didn't have any acreage requirement. That's no longer around. Right now, the minimum wooded acres required is 30. And the shortest time frame is 20 years. Now, there's programs that go for longer lengths than that and programs that require more wooded acres than that. But that's kind of the minimum that's available right now. Landowners, when they sell their carbon rights, which is basically what's going on, you're selling these rights to a project developer, one of those carbon companies that make the projects. They're going to take not only your forest, but the forest from several other landowners and merge them all together and then sell all those credits, 1,000, 5,000, 10, 50 credits to different buyers. So we're going to start getting into kind of what the landowners agreeing to. And I always advise landowners, have a lawyer review the contract because it is very, I can help with the forest management side of things, but not the legalese that takes place in the contract. Sometimes, depending upon which project developer you sell your carbon rights to, you might be mandated to grow your timber longer and at a larger size over X number of years. You may be allowed to do timber harvest, you may not. You may have to plant trees, you may not. It can be a combination thereof or something that's not listed on here. There's all sorts of different programs out there of these different project developers that will lead to carbon credit generation. You still own the timber, you're just restricted on what you can do with the timber. So think of it as an easement or an encumbrance in that matter. Most programs allow firewood removal, invasive species control, and then some limited timber harvesting. Okay, there's a lot of words on this slide, but I'll kind of just go through the gist. So this is what landowners need to think about. This is a very important slide. I recommend you take a picture of this with your phone if you're interested in carbon credits. So the contract for the carbon rights follows the property. So I'm on the top right side of this page. So if you sign a contract that restricts your timber harvesting for 50 years, and then you go to sell the property within that 50-year period, that new purchaser is obligated to follow the restrictions that you agreed to while you owned it. And most likely, you may have received all the payment for it already. So that timber will basically be useless for who's ever purchasing the property. So that's important to realize as well. And then the bottom right corner here, if you enroll into one of these projects, you may be forever disqualified from enrolling that same acreage into any other program in the future. There is some nuance to that. There are some exceptions, and it's expected to change. If you want specifics on that, follow up with me. But a good rule of thumb is once you've enrolled into a project, 50 years may go by and you may have only signed a 40-year contract. 50 years go by, you may not be able to enroll that property again. It's expected to change, and that's what everything on the left is. On the left side of the screen, you see some of the text. There is, like I said, there is some nuance here. So we can talk more specifics later, but it's something to be mindful of. So things I want to talk about with a landowner. If we were doing a carbon consult and I was walking the woods with you, these are the sorts of questions I'm going to ask. How long do you plan on owning the property? Is this short term? Is this handed down in generations and you intend to continue that? Or do you not have any idea, how you want to, what your ownership strategy is for the property? What's your current forest condition? Is the property suited for any of the restrictions that may be placed on timber harvesting that might be mandated by a certain program that you're enrolling in? If you're agreeing to not harvest timber for 30 years, can the property sustain that? Is that what's best for that forest? Or does the forest need a certain type of harvest right now in order to improve the health, to allow more growing space, more sunlight on the ground, and so forth? What does the carbon credit research tell us? What's the prices like? This is a new market for landowners with less than 5,000 acres. For landowners with more than 5,000, it's been going on since early 2000s in California. But for these smaller landowners, and when I say small, I mean between 30 to 5,000 acres, this is kind of new for forestry. So is it something that we want to enter an agreement now, or do we want to wait? Are we interested in projects that pay us a standard rate, or are we interested in projects that pay us like a revenue sharing sort of agreement where we'll ride the market of carbon credit pricing as opposed to just a flat rate? And then, you still maintain the timber rights, but do you have any other encumbrances on the property? Is there anything that limits your ability to cut timber as you wish? If so, if there's an encumbrance on there from some easement or some jurisdiction that says that you're not allowed to harvest timber on this property, then most likely you're going to be ineligible for a forest carbon program. Here I've got, and you'll be sent this document, but here you've got links of some of the critiques of carbon credits. I'm not here to get into the politics of global warming or the politics of carbon crediting and if it actually does what it says it does from an environmental standpoint. As a consultant, I'm ethically obligated to provide the landowners with these different options on forest management, different ways of generating income. So I'm simply providing these options to landowners and letting the landowners decide if it's worth it or not. Here are 3 critiques of carbon credits that are from the left side of the political spectrum. And I did that on purpose because usually you hear of these programs coming from that side of the aisle. So here are 3 left-leaning, I should say, sources of critiquing of carbon crediting as a whole. It is important that I provide both sides of this. I'm not trying to push it or to bash it. I'm simply providing the option to landowners. So if you're interested in moving forward, typically what happens is that you get a forester visit, whether it be by us or depending upon which program you're interested in, they might send their own foresters, but usually someone visits the property to do a timber inventory. You can receive a quote for your carbon, basically just like almost like an appraisal, but it's not technically an appraisal. It's going to be a quote for your carbon rights without you actually having to sign a contract per se. Our expertise is our number. We've done over 100 carbon consultations. We're probably around 200 of that right now. It is an exciting opportunity for certain landowners. It just depends if your property and your goals is a good fit for a carbon program. Really depends on what your forest looks like. Is it healthy? Does it need any sort of management? or is it well suited for some of these programs? And then do your goals line up with maybe some of the restrictions that a carbon program would entail? This is kind of everything that we look at when we're working through a carbon offer. We're looking at the amount of merchantable timber that's on a property, what your offer is compared to the amount of merchantable timber, and what your offer looks like compared to other landowners' offers. We're seeing an average of $10 to $15 per acre per year, and that can vary quite wildly on what your woods looks like. And if you've chosen sort of a lump sum standard payment structure or a revenue sharing structure or things like that. So you can see there are fluctuations in the average. Some additional sources. Again, you'll receive this PowerPoint. All those links are clickable. And then some information about how to get in touch with me. So unless you guys get any other questions, that's all I have at the moment, and I will stop my share and I will kind of go through some of the chat.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony. And you know, one of the best takeaways that I think all you guys should take is that it's about your goals. It is what your expectations are for your woods. Any natural resource professional is going to express it's all about you and what you want. And I would like to add on there too, you know, maybe it's not advantageous for you to start in the carbon market right this second. I would suggest, you know, looking at NRCS practices and maybe getting into an EQIP program to focus on the health of your forests and then move on to that in the future. I think that would be a great opportunity. Just to touch base on some of the things that we got into the chat. Thank you for everybody who's been answering them, Tom and Jason. You know, these are foresters and other natural resource professionals.
Yeah,
So we appreciate
Tom's all
them.
over it. He's doing a lot of the chat cleanup for me. Thanks,
For
Tom.
sure. So for those of you who don't have access to the chat, just to go over that real quick, someone asked about forest management plan and whether or not they can still participate in the program. Tom answered that you can participate if you have an existing forest management plan, but you might need a plan amendment to allow the carbon management. So just keep that in mind and talk to your, you know, consulting foresters or what have you about that. If you have a conservation easement, this is important, guys. If you have a conservation easement that prohibits timber harvest, this carbon will disqualify you, the carbon market. So just keep that in mind. If you do have an easement, maybe look into the contracts of whether or not you can harvest your timber or not.
And I'll follow up on that real
Go
quick,
ahead, yeah.
Sean. Kind of following those same lines. If you've got a corporation, say your property is in a trust or an LLC or what have you, obviously you'll need signatures and agreements by all members. They won't allow, you know, some members of a company to sign up the property and others not to. And following that line, and then I'll let Sean get back to it, is some properties require that you enroll all your acreage into a forest carbon program. Other properties allow you to pick and choose what acreage you want to enroll in a forest carbon program. That's something that's also important. But Sean, go ahead.
For sure. Yeah. See, and because this is new, for, you know, smaller landowners, we see that, you know, there is some nuance, right? And things are always ever changing, right? They're getting better on how to make it work for us. So keep that in mind, guys. Just another thing too. So as far as EQIP, it does not have a specific forest carbon practice yet. So keep that in mind if you guys are thinking about EQIP. EQIP, there's a lot of, EQIP is an incentivizing program. So focusing on, you know, tree plantings, you know, forest management of invasives, things like that. They're really great. And I would reach out to NRCS if you have any of those. And to start, if you haven't. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll pipe in again here. I see there's lots of questions about double dipping, so let me give you a scenario on how a lot of this stuff can mesh. Okay, so we've got landowner Anthony Pappas. Say let's say I got 30 acres or 50 acres. Let's say 1,000 because that's how much I want. Let's say I had 1,000 acres. I've got I apply for EQIP funding to get an EQIP funded forest management plan. So, I might have zero out-of-pocket expense, or I might have a small out-of-pocket expense to have a consulting forester write me an equip forest management plan. It's called a CPA 106. Okay, I can then take that CPA 106 that's been fully funded through equip, and I can take that same plan and I can enroll it into CAUV. Okay, so now I've got it enrolled in CAUV or enrolled in Ohio Forest Tax Law. It doesn't matter. Okay, within that plan, the forester recommended that I do a harvest. Well, I can look at possibly enrolling into a carbon program. I need to see if their harvest restrictions will permit me to do that harvest that was recommended in the plan. If not, ideally, we do the harvest first, and then we look into enrolling into a carbon program. Sometimes we can do both. We can enroll into a carbon program first, and then because we're harvesting timber in compliance with our plan and in compliance with the carbon contract, we can harvest timber while being enrolled into a carbon program. And we can also take that same management plan and apply for funding to do all the other practices that are outlined in that plan. Say it's multiflora rose control or autumn olive control, grapevine removal, timber stand improvement. As long as all of that is within the bounds of the carbon contract that you signed, we can do 3 or 4 different things all simultaneously. And all of this with little or no out-of-pocket expense, assuming you've got an equip forest management plan. So I wanted to put that in there, Sean, for you.
Yeah, that's important to know too. So, as far as CAUV, as far as forest tax law, it's not considered double dipping. Just for those of you who have a very, very small acreages, less than 30 acres, as far as Tom's knowledge, which I would say he's more knowledgeable than me. Maybe Anthony can talk about this too. Maybe in the future they're thinking about this, but as far as below 30 acres is not something that they're focusing on with carbon storage. If I have that correct. Anthony, you have anything on that?
Yeah, for now, 30 wooded acres is the minimum. There are some other carbon programs for different things. Like a lot of what we're talking about is improved forest management. So if you remember my 3 tiers, we're talking about that top one. Some of these, like avoided conversion or afforestation, might have larger minimums, like 300 acres or so forth. It really just varies on the type of project and then who the project developer is. And I can kind of help facilitate all that if you have questions specifically.
Awesome. And so another good question that others might appreciate from was, how does harvesting your forest affect the carbon credits? Tom answered that. Programs will have set limits on harvest for a contract period, and then the payment you receive based on the terms you agree to. So keep that in mind. It's possible, but make sure you're going through your contract. Make sure you're talking to the legal about it, because you don't want to come into any ramifications from harvesting your trees when it comes to carbon and getting your carbon credits. Let's see. Here's a question that Tom also answered about: can families who have less than 30 acres but adjoining properties combine them 30 plus acres and all agree? Let's see, can they participate? Yes, that's essentially what Tom says. Like, it's very likely if you combine the 30 plus acres and all agree, it has little more but it's possible. The thing is that, yeah, all parties are going to be involved in that when it comes to, timber harvest or anything. Make sure you guys are looking at the contracts and everybody's in agreement with that. Let's see here. So you might mention, so you mentioned that plantations, so I think that this is for Jordan. Plantations do not qualify. A lot of woodlands around here have old white pine plantations, or even sometimes a hardwood plantation. So these would not count. Is that correct?
Yeah, Anthony kind of answered it a little bit. Kind of that one of the most frustrating parts about carbon programs is our answer is it depends. So it's like it depends on the structure of the programs you're going into. It depends on how strict they are with those things. So I think You'll just have to play it by ear and see what the program specifies for, but it doesn't hurt to get a management professional in there to see exactly what you have going on, because I don't know how old some of those plantations are or exactly what the scenario is. So I would just get a professional in there to take a look and see exactly what you have going on.
Yeah, thank you, Jordan. Yeah, and thanks, Anthony. I just saw your messages responses. A new question came in from Fred. He asked, oh, Anthony answered it. So how big is the buyer's market? Anthony answered international. So if you search ecosystem marketplace voluntary carbon market report, you can see an in-depth review of the marketplace. And I'll make sure I put that into our resources too, for those of you who want that access.
It's a very like economic and ecologist. It's not a light read, I'll tell you that.
Okay, good. It's something I would like to read, but maybe not everybody else. So
I like to nerd out on things sometimes, so that's a
right,
good document. Yeah.
Don't we all? And I just want to like reiterate too, you know, if even if the carbon market is for you, you know, looking at a forest management plan it's always beneficial. Just to talk about NRCS, they help with that. If you need some assistance on getting a forest management plan, so keep that in mind too. You know, it's good to invigorate your forests and focus on the health of them, but also the benefits that you can receive, you know, monetary wise, from doing all that work. Another question came in: how likely will all participants get to sell? Does that do you guys understand that? Do we need to elaborate?
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Okay, perfect. Let's see here. All right, so from Anthony, he just responded to that. Some won't penalize you, but instead just reduce the payment. So assuming they removed timber.
Yep, I'm working on Fred's right now.
Awesome. Oh, that was for Janice. A lot of landowners have leased or to fracking companies. So how might that affect qualification? So that's what Anthony just answered. And to Fred's question about how likely will all participants get to sell, Anthony got to answer that. There's a exploratory part of the process when carbon companies will look at the feasibility of such sale. Then if deemed eligible, you can begin contracting. Awesome. So are there any other questions that we got here? We have 15 minutes left. Feel free to ask your questions. We're happy to answer them. I think that this was a really great introduction to the carbon market. Thank you guys for coming in and joining us. Real quick before people start leaving, it would not be a Woodland Wednesday without me doing a joke. So sorry that I wasn't on the ball here. This is my first hosting of a webinar, so bear with me. But what would I do to Gail without saying a lovely joke? So real quick, I'll just bring these little puns up here. So why does carbon enjoy parties? Does anybody know?
Why is that?
It's good at bonding. Yeah, it's
Sean, what's brown and sticky?
Oh, jeez. Oh gosh, what?
A stick.
A stick. You'll find here that us in Woodland Wednesdays, we love our puns. We love our tree puns. I got a second one here, and if I'm got these right, these were from Gail. So give kudos to Gail. Why couldn't the dying tree no longer hold on to its carbon?
Why?
It was breaking down. Oh, that's a good one, Gail. I think that she was a little iffy about them. I think those were great. So I didn't want anybody to leave without those puns. Let's see. We just got a couple of thank yous. And that, you know, about our contacts. Awesome. Love it. Real quick, guys, too, I'm going to put into the chat here for those of you, but I'm also going to send it as well. We just have a little survey. So if you have a chance to do the survey tonight, we'd appreciate it, but we'll also send the survey out. It's in the chat. I just submitted it. So if you have a chance, go ahead and hit that survey and let us know what we can do to do better, what you would like to hear for the future. And if that's all, if there's anything else real quick in the next minute or so, appreciate everybody participating and coming on board. We'll be rolling out some other Woodland Wednesdays coming out in the future. So keep in touch with your papers, your local soil and water conservation district, farm bureau to access when our next webinar or when our in-person meetings will be, so that you can come to those in the future. Other than that, a lot of thank yous. Thank you so much, guys. And thank you to my two presenters. You guys were fantastic. And we will make sure that we get all the resources out on a mailing list to everybody who participated tonight. So that way you can re-access not only the webinar, but also the resources that our presenters were able to present on. So let's see. Yeah, so just real quick, someone else said too, like it's important, it's probably imperative to getting an attorney to go over your contracts. So keep that in mind, everybody. All right. If that's all, if we have no other questions, you got our contact information. Please feel free to reach out to us if there's any questions that the resources may not be able to elaborate on for you guys. Other than that, I think that, we can all have a nice early evening. Thank you, everybody, again. I really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you in the future. Okay. All right, everybody. Have a good one.